explaining to do this week. So let's just jump right into this. We had a packed week, cards everywhere. We can't possibly get to everything. So let's start with the Jose Aldo versus Conor McGregor fight. Oh, wait, the fight's over already. So let's move on to Anthony Joshua versus Dillian White. So I've seen a lot of people on Reddit saying that Joshua's been exposed. He's not the world level. And then I've seen other people say, I'm completely convinced this is the truth. This is the future of the heavyweight division. I like Joshua even more than ever. Where are we at right now with this? Simon, I think you're the expert on Anthony Joshua. What do you got to say about Joshua's performance yesterday? If you didn't see it, Joshua hurts White in the first, he's hurt himself in the second, and then from then on loses a round or two, comes back, boxes, and then stops White ultimately brutally. Not to mention after the first round, there was a big fight after the bell. White was almost disqualified. Corners entered the ring. It was crazy. But go ahead, Simon.
Yeah, I mean, I think first off, exceptionally entertaining fight. It's going to do a lot for the sport. I think if people were tuning in and that was their first exposure, they're going to be, I think, returning. I think they're going to be interested enough to want to see more of that. Really scintillating fight. And I think it wasn't the fight we necessarily anticipated. I certainly didn't envisage it going quite so long. But I think that part of that's down to the styles that were employed. It felt like, I don't know, when AJ was an amateur, when he was early in his career, he says it himself that he'd adopt a style sort of that Mike Tyson inside fighter, trying to mess it up and create a brawl on the inside. And over his development period, we've seen him evolve out of that into a more rangy boxer, more controlled and disciplined. And I felt like he kind of regressed a bit last night, and I don't know whether it was just the old habits coming back out because he was against an opponent from so early in his career that it sort of regressed him. But he did occasionally slip into tearing things up on the inside and making a brawl out of it, which of course isn't suitable for his frame and style. And that's where we saw White able to get some success. I don't think he was massively hurt. He definitely took a shot he felt, and it definitely, threw him out of his rhythm for a moment, and that was very obvious. It has interested me though, the amount of people that have done a sort of 180 and been like, he's been exposed. It's like I think what we've actually seen is he's gone from an invincible god figure to someone who is immortal. It's that that speck of blood that makes you say he's just a man. And I mean, if you had him pegged to someone who was above, just a man, then that was probably down to you overestimating somebody. But it's not a surprise to see somebody get clipped, and ultimately he showed he could take a shot. He didn't collapse, and he didn't immediately crumble under the pressure. He got back and found his own rhythm. He was mature, set up his routines again, and ultimately used it to shut the fight down. So, I mean, if your opinion's gone from, I thought he was totally infallible and now I've seen someone can get to him occasionally, then that's about where you need to be. But if you think that he's immortal still or totally exposed in a joke, you're too far one way or the other.
I think anytime you see a heavyweight that goes through a little bit of adversity and come out of the other side, you should give them a lot of respect, especially when they're up and coming, because you think about all these American heavyweight prospects like Seth Mitchell and things like that, who at the first sign of adversity just went down, didn't make any adjustments, and then that was the end of their career. So just because somebody's a little bit hurt or gets a little bit wobbled, especially in the heavyweight division, if they show the ability to get themselves out of it, it doesn't mean they're exposed. The word exposed is just overused in general.
Yeah.
It is silly.
And Joshua really adjusted nicely in that fight. He settled down, began to box on the outside, and he showed he's actually really skilled at boxing. White couldn't do anything past the fourth round. He was basically trying to get lucky with the shot, and Joshua started to toy with him and then set up the big knockout. And look, power fools people, and they get crazy when a guy like Joshua comes and knocks everybody out, because really, if you look online at the betting odds, Joshua is a huge, he's even right now on some websites with Tyson Fury if that fight were to be made. I mean, he just beat Vladimir Klitschko. He's shown that he can deal with a big puncher who's around. I mean, Klitschko's slightly bigger than Anthony Joshua. So power fools a lot of people, and it certainly fools the public even with betting. I liked what Joshua did last night, though. I wouldn't say that he's been exposed, and I wouldn't say that he's, he looks I feel any worse about him. I think he's human now, and I do think that we've seen what we need to see from him insofar as like, well, how does he deal with adversity? What is he going to do when somebody isn't willing to stay on the outside and get outboxed and knocked out? And
how did this fight not get stopped after the first round?
Because White has got chin of granite.
No. I mean, no. After like the controversy that happened.
I think the referee was mature enough to understand it would upset the public so much on such a big stage to do that. That seeing as they managed to get it under control, I think that they did the right thing, and you could see that they were considering it, and the ref was taking a good look at things. But once, and I think Banks did a lot to settle that down as well. I think he's due his credit for potentially saving this match.
Like that. 99% of the time, that's a disqualification, I think.
Yeah, and I think in most stages you'd see that, but on one of the biggest stages where it's a very big, certainly domestic interest. I mean, even the people over the pond were curious about this one. Absolutely. So even though it wasn't aired in the US, so it's like I think they'd understood the amount that was on the fight, and seeing that they could pursue it, that they should. But my read on it was that AJ toys with him in the first and has such success that he goes into that finishing mode, and Dillian Whyte's a bit flattened, and I think that he decides, hang on, I could get us disqualified, we could have a controversial rematch here, there's something I can do with this. Yep. What happens, though, is in the second, AJ abandons his boxing and thinks, I nearly had you finished a moment ago. I'm going to go straight back into that kill switch mode and come in intense and finish you. It's at this point that he's being reckless, borderline punches himself out, and in the process, because he hasn't set it up properly in the second, eats a shot in return. That then makes Joshua show some respect, which allows Dillian Whyte to grow in confidence, and suddenly you've got a fight on your hands. And that's where it sort of plays out more maturely from that point onwards, and AJ goes about things the correct way and sets up his work a bit more. Jab was used very limited from AJ. You don't usually see that from him. He's often got a much better discipline about him. I do think that he regressed in style a little last night, but I don't necessarily think it was terrible, and I don't think that he's going to continue doing that.
I thought his regression was brief. I think he learned his lesson. Mm-hmm. And the commentator said it too during the fight, but it was so true. This is a fight that both fighters needed to have, because you got to remember that Dillian Whyte's also, he's not, it's tough to call these guys prospects because they're a little old to be a prospect, I think. But they're still both really inexperienced, and they both needed a fight like this. Obviously, Joshua came out on top, and he won in a big way. And look, Joshua had to win that way. They would have stopped it in the first, either because of the ridiculous. And if you didn't watch the fight, the reason why it got crazy after the first round is because Joshua landed a couple of punches. No, maybe one punch. He landed a punch after the bell.
It was on or after. It was. Yeah.
It was close. It was, we see that all the time. And Whyte got pissed off and threw two more punches, like over the referee's back.
Like attacked him into his corner. Into Joshua as Joshua was going to his corner.
So, the corner's cleared, all of this stuff. But I liked what I saw from Joshua in this fight. I don't feel any worse about him. But I think a lot of people can scale back their expectations of Joshua because, again, people had Joshua beating like everybody in the heavyweight division with the exception of Vladimir Klitschko. But the question is, do we still think Joshua can beat Wilder? That's a question we'll have to answer for another time.
I'm totally convinced of that.
Or now.
If that fight gets announced, we can delve into why I think that.
Because Joshua boxes good?
He does box good.
Okay, good. Well, let's talk about somebody who did not box too good yesterday. And that's Jose Aldo. No, I'm kidding. It's Luke Campbell. So if you didn't see this fight, Luke Campbell was dropped in the 5th round. Good shot. He wasn't like completely out on his feet. He wasn't Amir Khan by any stretch of the imagination, and certainly wasn't Jose Aldo. And it was a tough fight. Mendy was a really tough opponent, and Campbell did not have the power to keep Mendy from doing what Mendy wanted to do. And again, Campbell wasn't dominated in this fight, but it was one of those tough fights where it's just, you just got outworked. This was like losing to Isaac Chilemba. So how big?
Did Campbell lose?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
No.
He did.
Yep.
Split decision.
Oh, I thought he just went 12 rounds. He lost?
He lost.
Oh, man.
Yep. So here's
Wow.
my excuses. Let me throw off the excuses now because we're fans of Luke Campbell here, and for a brief moment we're gonna not be objective. So he was probably weight trained because he's like 5'9" and trying to fight at 135. This was a really big step up very quickly. His last two opponents, 21-2 domestic fighter Tommy Coyle, Abu Bakr Beshlagavim, 9-6-1, and now Ivan Mendy, 32-4, who took Victor Polsto 12 rounds. You know, the current top super lightweight in the world that's not named Terrence Crawford.
That's right.
And I just want to say this in watching that fight, and Simon, I'll let you go off because you've been championing Campbell as well. Sky did a really good job last night, like really setting the audience up. As I was watching it this morning, I could tell that Sky in the second round already, they sent something and they start dropping hints like justifying why Campbell would lose that fight. And if he did, why it was okay. If you go back and watch it, just listen. Sky is setting you up very early because they know something's not right.
Yeah. I was really impressed by the way they handled that because I was worried because, you know, Campbell's obviously the product that they're pushing to an extent. You sometimes will find that they'll be outraged or faux outraged and, you know, they call it a robbery at the end and, you know, whip everyone up into a frenzy to demand them an immediate rematch or to demand that it's an injustice. And I think they quite responsibly admitted that it was a loss and they kind of talked the audience's expectations towards that end.
Yes, I actually want to say that Sky did a really good job on commentary yesterday. I mean, Paul Smith is really biased, but he would say it, and so would David Hay and Carl Froch. When they were asked for opinions and stuff, they would say like, "Oh, well, you know, this is a good friend of mine, but I will say that he does need to do this, and you know, I saw it like this, but he's also my friend." They did a really good job doing that, and I want to point that out. Because, you know, Sky gets a lot of criticism for their commentary, for Jim Watts, everything. So I thought that was good. But, man, how set back is Campbell now? What did they do with him?
So after the fight, they spoke with Eddie Hearn, and he said what I totally believe is that regardless of the outcome here, he's going to be in the exact same sort of fights in going into next year as he would be win or lose. It's not going to make a difference to his journey. They're not abandoning him. They're not going to take a step down or a step back. They're going to move on at the same pace they intended to.
So what they're basically saying is we were still going to develop Campbell either way, and he wasn't getting a title shot anytime soon.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where they're going with him, and it was an upsetting fight to watch. To be honest, it hurt each round.
Well,
Was the one card that he did win on, was that card like way off?
Oh yeah, I had 2 rounds for Campbell.
I don't. What, 2 rounds?
2 rounds.
Are you from France?
We're in Mayweather Pacquiao territory.
I disagree with
Honest-
Simon. I think
You can't have had more than 4.
I think it was a closer fight than 2 rounds though. I think you've just given up on Campbell after the first round.
Can you point to more than 2 rounds and say that this is an obvious Campbell round though? I think
No, you
there were
can't.
2 rounds. I think there were 2 rounds that he won clearly, and then there's a few swing rounds that I didn't find in his favor.
But that's the point I think I want to make is that Campbell wasn't completely dominant in any round,
No.
really.
No.
But he was competitive in most of the rounds. So you can see like there was some swing there. And if your name is John Keane, which implies that you're from the UK, you could definitely see that Campbell won at least 6 rounds.
He wasn't dominated, you know, in any sense. I think that he was competitive and narrowly lost each round. The fact I have it only 2 rounds for him shouldn't indicate that I thought he was whitewashed. He wasn't. I think he just got pipped a bit in the majority of the rounds.
Okay, I think the point I want to make here is that it was if you had it for 2 rounds for Campbell, as you did, it wasn't like that doesn't really tell the story. It was one of those fights where like a guy won a fight, a unanimous decision, but it's like, yeah, but every card was 7-5 and he had to work for every single round. And it was one of those. The thing with Campbell, and I want to jump off this topic because like I think we're going to go too long and make people turn off the podcast, but Campbell does not have the power that he might think he has, but for
Stealing
sure.
my points here. This is my
Fine,
read
go,
on
go.
this.
You hurry up and do it.
Yeah,
or else I'm gonna
what
take it.
I saw a Luke Campbell that, as for wrong reasons, thought that he's a power puncher, and it feels like his corner have incorrectly thought, yeah, you got big power, and like early on he was, planting his feet and trying to go for one big shot to the body, or it was like he was like trying to get rid of this guy, and you don't have the power to do that on the world stage. He should be a tactician. He should be, his frame and his skill set doesn't lend itself to being a big knockout artist power puncher. I want to rewind to when he fought Brizuela. That was absolutely stunning and surprising that he stopped him. At the time, we all fancied that as a decision job because we thought Campbell doesn't have the power to get rid of this guy. And, just because he's blew through a few people here and there that aren't necessarily on the world scene doesn't suddenly change that and make him a power puncher. So, he's planting his feet early, and he gets punished for that, and he gets a knockdown. I don't think it was the worst knockdown you can be caught with, but it stunted his confidence, and it meant that the rest of the fight, he was being walked down. He wasn't able to back him up, and he wasn't able to do anything intelligent about it. He's got his corner there telling him he's winning every round. In the 12th, they're like 3 minutes to
It was
victory.
really stupid.
And he's miles behind. They should have. He did need Roach in there in the 12th to say we've laid an egg here. You need to get the knockout or we've lost.
I think you needed someone to tell him that a little earlier than that.
Yeah, totally. So I think that it doesn't speak to his skill set. It speaks to his ring IQ, and his corner should be taking a long hard look at themselves as well, because they've given their candidate the wrong plan. This isn't a power puncher. This is someone who's absolutely not down and out. I still have huge expectations for them in the sport, but that's on the condition that they learn what sort of fighter they are and how, what style of fight is most befitting for them. Because he fought the wrong game plan, and it showed.
All right, so on to the next one. So congratulations to whoever made some money betting on Ismael Barroso, as we advised last week. And you should have, because Mitchell was the favorite for some reason. And Barroso came in, and one check hook later, Mitchell's down and out. So that was Mitchell's 4th shot at a world title. Is there, what's possibly next for this guy?
A 5th shot?
Well said, well said. The one thing I wanted to touch on from this fight, because, we spent enough time already on the lightweight division, and we still got more to go. Kevin Mitchell... lost. But Ismael Barroso was really interesting as a fighter. I think he's actually way better than even he looked yesterday. He did a lot of little things that I liked. And he has power. He's quick. He countered nicely. I think this guy is a real player at lightweight. What did you see, Simon?
Yeah, I thought it was the fight that we'd expected to see. I don't know in terms of Barroso. I mean, obviously, getting past Mitchell's one thing. But do you see him hanging in, potentially beating some of the top people in the division?
Who do you consider the top? Because there's the
That's a
Corolla
difficult
level,
one.
And then there's a Linares level.
Well,
and
let's start there. How do you think Barroso gets on at the Crawler level?
I think he beats him.
I don't. I think that Crawler will take it, but I think that it would be a pick 'em. Would you be surprised either way with the outcome?
I would favor Barroso. I think.
But would you be surprised if he didn't pull it off?
Oh, well, obviously not, because it's your one win that anybody has seen of you is Kevin Mitchell. So he's got that. But I'm just looking from, what did I see? Did he pass the eye test? And he did. He looked really good. Now, could he lose to Corolla? I think so. But right now, just projecting from what we saw, what he did against Mitchell, I think he beats him. He for sure beats Derry Matthews. That's, given.
Yeah, I feel confident on that. But I don't necessarily favor him over Corolla, although I think it would be a tough fight for both of them. I don't know how he gets on against,
I think he beats Linares. If Linares isn't on his game, Linares gets countered and put away. Remember, Linares can get put down pretty easily, and his face is rice paper. That is
Flanagan?
a fight. I think Flanagan is a tougher fight, because Flanagan is really tough. He's a big lightweight, and he's got some power. So I don't know how that fight goes. I think Flanagan's a slight favorite. But Barroso looked good, and I could be completely wrong on this. I'm pretty sure that Barroso will, at some point in time, prove me wrong.
You haven't seen the last of this guy, though, definitely.
No, in fact, if I'm Eddie Hearn, this is the guy I want Corolla fighting. because, yeah, he comes in off the back of beating Kevin Mitchell, but also he's actually a good lightweight. Like, that's a good win if Krolla can get him under his belt. Like, Krolla beating Barroso now is one of the best lightweights in the world versus where he's at now, where it's like, yeah, he's one of the lightweights that has a title. All right. I think we should move on to Chris Eubank Jr. Versus Gary O'Sullivan. Now, after the kiss at the weigh-in, which was interesting, I think the first 4 rounds of that fight was the best 4 rounds of the night, of the card, of all cards. It was wild. If you did not see that, this fight, basically just watch the first 4 rounds and then know that Eubank Jr. pulls away after that point. He keeps doing what he's doing, and Gary O'Sullivan stops what he's doing.
Yeah.
A real wild one. Eubank Jr. is now the mandatory for Danny Jacobs. Simon, does Eubank Jr. have any shot against Danny Jacobs?
I don't see why not. So I think probably it's worth setting the premise with Eubank Jr. and how he did last night. And I think that obviously congrats to him, pulled off a good performance. But again, I'm worried by what I see in terms of ring IQ. He takes punishment he doesn't need to. I think that he tactically lets himself down. And he was eating short little hooks that he had no business eating. He could have avoided should he have fought more cleverly. But, he's throwing lead uppercuts and things, and it's just bizarre. He has good tools and good sort of fundamentals, and there's the skill sets there, but the way that it's implemented and the sort of ring IQ behind it doesn't add up for me, and that's where I think he's going to come unstuck. I mean, if he's eating short little choppy hooks, is there anyone in the middleweight division who delivers short little choppy hooks that put people to sleep?
Sergio Mora?
I just think that unless he learns to be more responsible defensively and tactically, he's going to have some hard nights on the world stage. But he totally will hang in the world stage.
Well, here's my... I was trying to explain Chris Eubank Jr. To somebody yesterday who has never heard of him. And it was basically this. Eubank Jr., he has every single tool that you could possibly want to give. Like, if you were trying to create a boxer, even Fight Night champion, it would be Chris Eubank Jr. Just maximum power, athleticism, like just ridiculous athleticism and stamina. His offense is really fluid, all of that stuff. He's got it all. And he's even not bad defensively. I mean, he's not great, but not bad. But the thing that Eubank Jr. lacks is he doesn't think in boxing terms. Like, it's not instinctual for him. It's why he gets hit with shots where it's like, you could have just stepped to the side and you would have never been hit with that shot. But he just stands there and takes it. And that's what he did against O'Sullivan should not have been hitting him with those shots. There were shots that's like, why does Eubank keep getting hit with the left hook? And it's like, well, he doesn't, he never expects that punch to come. And when it does come, he doesn't know what to do with it. He's got to think like, okay, left hook coming from this side, my feet are here, so I need to duck. But before he can even have that thought process, the punch has already bounced off of his head. And I think that's what we saw with Eubank Jr.'s. He had to outlast O'Sullivan, and after 4 rounds, O'Sullivan had emptied his clip and had nothing left. I think Eubank Jr. is most likely going to lose with the guys like Danny Jacobs. Let's not even bring Golovkin into this conversation because Eubank has a long life ahead of him without
the
Golovkin
person I was obviously getting at with the short hooks was Andy Lee. I think Andy Lee's kryptonite for him.
Oh, well, more on Andy Lee later. I agree, though. And rematch with Billy Joe Saunders really quickly. Who wins?
I think we see the same fight.
Do you think Saunders gasses, though? Like he did last time?
No, and I don't think he necessarily did. It was a weird fight in terms of lots of people viewed it as Eubank started late. He didn't try until the late rounds. I don't think that it was for lack of trying. I think that it was only towards the end that he managed to start finding success as Billy Joe Saunders did slow a bit. But I wouldn't say he gassed by any means. I think that he just reduced from 100% to like 80%. But no, I think that we get pretty much the same event.
All right, so last few points about this card. Tony Bellew won a decision. Good for him. Derek Chisora got a knockout. Good for him. And if you did not see the Chris Eubank Jr. versus Gary O'Sullivan fight again, go watch it. First 4 rounds are just dynamite. Over in Russia, not going to say too much about this because it was a typical Russian crazy card, but the sad news from the Russian card was that Roy Jones Jr. was brutally knocked out. Now, a lot of us, Roy Jones is fighting past his expiration date, and, you could tell. I mean, he was hit with the right hand that he just fell limp to the ground. Not much to say there other than we hope Roy Jones get somebody in his ear who can just convince him that it's over. I know you want to go from middleweight to heavyweight and win a title in each of the divisions, but it's just not going to happen. Not if you get knocked out by Enzo Macronelli. All right, let's bring Jason back into this conversation. So Nonito Donaire versus Cesar Juarez. Donaire was fighting a man with a master's degree in penal law. And it was an absolute war that was actually competitive, that went 12 rounds, that saw Donaire land his left hook, the murderous left hook, over and over, even dropped Juarez.
Yeah, he landed that hook over and over and over again, but Juarez just kept coming. The first 4 rounds of the fight were basically a complete Donaire shutout, and it was like, oh wow, look, Donaire's speed, Donaire's power, right? I could see people getting tricked into all those kind of things that happened. But then I think it was maybe can't recall the actual round number, maybe 6 or 7. But Donaire rolled his ankle really bad. And
oh yeah, that's true.
He rolled his ankle to the point where he was basically for the following couple rounds had literally just planted his feet. And it was at that point that the lawyer there was able to come in and get some work done on him. But it turned into a really bloody, brutal fight. A lot of back and forth exchanges. Donaire had cuts over both of his eyes. And I really think his opponent's success is attributed to Donaire's inability to move after he had rolled his ankle. Because before Donaire had rolled his ankle, it was pretty hey, these guys are in 2 different leagues. It looked like one of those fights. But once Donaire planted his feet and slowed down a little bit, the fight got very competitive very quickly. Donaire was getting knocked around like a rag doll when he was up against the ropes. But then he'd quickly move out, and save himself, because he still has those smart boxing instincts. So he wouldn't let himself get, caught too much. But he just couldn't help it too at some points. What do you think, Angelo?
Well, the interesting thing is you brought up the foot thing, but I forgot about that. And I didn't even take that into consideration when I was looking at Donaire, because I felt that with the exception of the 4th round, his left hook had nothing on it. Juarez was just taking it and smiling. I mean, he didn't actually smile, but he wasn't affected by it. And I think Donaire, there's just something about him where, I don't know when this switched, but something switched at one point. He bought into the hype of that left hook, and he thinks that that's all he needs to do in a fight. And he just spends entire fights. He spent that 12 rounds trying to land that left hook. Occasionally he landed the straight right, but mostly it was the left hook. And Juarez just kept pushing forward and waited for Donaire to gas, which ultimately happened, and then went to work. And it was in the late rounds where Juarez almost took that fight. If Juarez had won maybe 1 or 2 rounds early, that would have been a really close fight, and Juarez might have scored the upset.
Absolutely. But he didn't, because Donaire was really just being a slickster boxer, keeping things on the outside in those first 4 rounds. You couldn't give any of the early rounds to Juarez.
What do you think about this being a fight of the year?
Well, the only thing that I could say about it being for a fight of the year is that the change in pace and just the brutality of it, made it a very interesting fight, because it looked like it was going one direction for quite a while, and then it went completely off the rails. So that's always something that I like to see in a fight of the year, candidate, is something that's a little bit unexpected, right? And it had some knockdowns that made the fight interesting. It had a guy coming back, from being pretty much beat up, getting beat on and beat up pretty bad. And now all of a sudden he came back, So I don't know that it is the fight of the year, but I certainly wouldn't be upset if it's in like, those 5 fights that people vote from kind of thing.
Is Donaire done? Should he be done?
I haven't been thinking he's going to be at the top level for a while ever since that second Vic Darchinyan fight where we saw, Darchinyan outbox him for 9 rounds. Then he landed, his miracle punch and got him out of there. Ever since then, I haven't really had too much faith in Donaire.
I agree. I mean, if you just look at the top guys at super bantamweight,
Yeah.
Donaire doesn't have a chance. He's
That was
not
my
beating
turning
Frampton.
point.
He's not beating Rigondeaux. He's not beating Quigg. I mean, now we're looking at guys like Julio Ceja. That's a fight that if Donaire doesn't land that left hook, good luck, Donaire.
And even if he does land it, though, because you saw him land it a bunch this last fight. So, like, how much is left on it? And when your power starts to go.
What I want to see them do, and I don't know that they will, but I would like to see is, and I don't know if HBO picks this up because I think they're out on Donaire, but Albert Pagara is one of the super bantamweight prospects coming up. He's out of the Philippines. Put this fight in the Philippines. I imagine it would be a massive fight over there. Just because Donaire, I think he's a big star in the Philippines, and Pagara is one of these young up-and-comers. He often fights on the Donny Nietes undercards. A passing of the torch moment, if you will. And I think Pagara beats Donaire at this point. But for now, Donaire, it's interesting to see where he's going to go next, especially now. That was for a title. So it's not like it gets easier for Donaire from here on out. I mean, unless he fights Alejandro Hernandez or something, who's got 11 losses and ranked in the top 10 according to BoxRec. Felix Verdejo scored another big knockout. This is what he does. You put a guy in front of him that is not that good defensively. Verdejo's knocking him out. It was nice to see his hand issues didn't plague him. He didn't hold back on any of his punches. But again, Verdejo needs to be in with somebody who's a little better for us to what I'm trying to say here is slow down. We've just seen 2 fights this weekend where if you don't slow down your expectations, you will ultimately be shocked. Dos Santos he's not that good. 30 years old, knocked out in 2 of his last 3 fights. Put him in there with a young up-and-coming highlight reel knockout artist like Verdejo. You get knocked out. And Verdejo does seem to have all the tools in the shed, but again, knockouts are very deceptive. Let's see. Omar Figueroa versus Antonio DeMarco. So, Simon, do you want to say something? Because I convinced you to watch this fight, even though it was kind of late for you. I mean, it was only 1:30 a.m., and you stood up till like 5 a.m. or something the night before. Simon's like, wait, what? Talk about an American fight?
Simon was the epitome of Roy Jones going down right there. That's what it sounded like.
I told Simon to watch this because Simon wasn't planning on watching it. But Simon loves heavyweight fights. Like his favorite division is heavyweight. So I was like, how are you gonna not watch Chris Arreola fight? Like he's at least guaranteed for 6 rounds of chaos,
of madness. Yeah.
He
was in shape last night. He turned up in the shape of his career.
Well, Simon was trying to convince me that Arreola was in shape, and I was not buying it.
No, not objectively in shape, but that was the leanest I've seen Arreola in a number of years. Like, when have you seen Arreola look that lean?
I'm trying to remember, but didn't he get into really good shape recently, and then he lost, and then he was like, screw it, and he just blew up afterwards?
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure that happened.
It was the fight that
was it Stavern?
made Wilder champion, right? The second Stavern fight. He got into really great shape.
He was really
like
lean.
140. Yeah, he was super lean. Like,
140.
I mean, 240
for him.
240. Yeah, no, 240. He was super lean at 240, and but then he lost, and he was just like, "F that, I'm coming in." He came in at like 267 in his next fight.
Yeah, that was the lightest he's weighed in 5 years.
Well, good for him. It's an accomplishment. He deserves a round of applause.
His fight against Friday Ahonyanya in 2011 was.
I remember. Friday. He's a good fighter.
Yeah, and that's when he weighed less. But every fight since then, he's been 240 plus.
His nickname is the 13th. Friday the 13th. With losses to Mike Perez and David Tua.
Friday the 13th, and he fought Chris the Nightmare Ariel.
Oh man, I hope that card was on Halloween. Was it on Halloween? Oh, they really missed.
They really missed. Yeah.
I saw lots of people seemed very entertained by this fight, though, Ariola versus Kaufman.
Hang on, let me ask you a question. Did Ariola's nose get broken in the first couple rounds?
No.
Was there blood everywhere? No.
No, it should have, because these guys, it was basically, people don't realize, they complain about the heavyweight division, but this is, and boxing in general, but this is the kind of fight that you actually want to watch. And they're putting it on free TV. It's like slugfest, no defense, guys going down. Yeah. This is what you want.
It was Rock'em Sock'em Robots. They were taking it in turns to eat monster shots with, very little finesse or technique.
And it was the kind of shots where like they echo throughout the arena. I mean, it was like loud. It sounded like somebody's hitting a punching bag with a bat every time they would land a shot. Ariola takes a decision. I disagreed with it. I thought Kaufman won 7-5, but it's not like that was an outrageous decision.
Wasn't a robbery either.
Yeah, it was. I mean, sure, it's not like Ariola won 118 to 110. It was 7-5 on the cards, so fair enough. Ariola was dropped in the second or third round. Big shot that he took. Kaufman worked the body like no heavyweight I've seen in a long time. He should have the nickname Body Snatcher because he did a lot of body work in that fight. And unfortunately didn't have much of an effect until like the 10th round when they both pretty much slowed down, as expected. And by the way, if you have two guys that are very big guys like Ariola and Kaufman, you should not be scheduling them for 12 rounds. That's just not fair to us. It's cool for them, but not to us. They don't have the stamina for a 12-round fight. So Omar Figueroa versus Antonio DeMarco. I doubt Simon wants to say anything about this, so I'll just say something and then we'll move on. So I really don't like that Figueroa feels he has to throw 1,000 punches in a fight and then fight on the inside. I think he's wasting a lot of his energy, and it showed because when the 9th and 10th round came around, he could no longer keep DeMarco on the inside. And if you didn't watch this fight, this is basically what happened. Figueroa would rush in, push DeMarco to the ropes. DeMarco was like, oh, okay, fine, I'll do this. And then Figueroa would just tee off on him. And DeMarco would occasionally punch him, occasionally get back to the center, and then we repeat. And so DeMarco was basically outclassed for 7 or 8 rounds. He had a few moments, and then 9th, 10th round came around, and Figueroa really started to tire. DeMarco was able to get him on the outside and started to pick him apart. DeMarco looked really nice at times, really fast. He looked strong. And he actually almost hurt Figueroa at one point. I don't know if he was hurt because Figueroa is like the one fighter who just lets his head be limp because his head got snapped back, but I wasn't quite sure if he was hurt or not. Because he kept coming forward and throwing punches. So if he was hurt, credit to Figueroa for being one of those guys that can just keep fighting like nothing's happened when they're hurt. Ultimately, though, if you do that, you will get knocked out pretty badly, but at least it was mostly entertaining. And this was another fight where it's like, this is the kind of fight that people want to watch. Two guys standing on the inside, just throwing blows. No, not much defense, throwing blows. A little drama at the end when DeMarco came on and started fighting on the outside. That was cool. That's what people want to see. And this was also on free TV. But, Simon wasn't much of a fan of that. And to be honest, I think Figueroa wasted a lot of punches that he didn't need to. So let's move on, because unless you have something to say, Simon.
No, go on.
Okay, Oscar Valdez, he scored a stoppage over Ernie Sanchez. Now, let's give some credit to Bob Arum. We don't do this very often, but I want to give some credit to Bob Arum. Shout out to Bob Arum. You really rarely see that the top-ranked prospects get upset. And you know why? Because they're matched in a way that has worked for decades, maybe even a century, given Bob Arum's age. There's a way in which you bring prospects up. You increase their level and then decrease it at the same time. And he's doing it with Verdejo. He's doing it with Valdez. And that's why Verdejo, Valdez, they're doing really well. And even guys like Benavidez and stuff, they're doing really well. And Matchroom and PBC haven't got this memo yet. They're trying to do something different where they're matching their guys quickly against really good fighters. I mean, Rashid Warren got a title shot this year. Didn't really need to get that title shot. He was 13-0? You could have, but I mean, again, this is the age of the super prospect, And I mean, even Golden Boy matches their guys better than PBC and Matchroom. So
the problem is too, once you get somebody a title like Wilder, people start calling them champions and expecting more out of them.
Exactly.
Seriously, it becomes really bad for that person's career, and fans turn on them really quick. So just not Wilder had 30-something plus fights, but when you're talking about somebody, right? When you're talking
Vlad
about
has
somebody,
60, so
how many were championship fights?
No, you're right. No one cares who they are until they put on the belt, and then they're expected to maintain a high standard.
And look at this brilliance here. So Jose Benavidez was also on the undercard. Remember Jose Benavidez with that wild win over Mauricio Herrera that he did not deserve?
Right.
Benavidez is suddenly fighting at 152 pounds. You know why? Because we're like, if we keep that title on him at 140 pounds, we're going to have to match him appropriately. Let's not do that. Move him up 2 divisions.
Yeah, you have the Cotto issue where you accidentally get a belt and then think,
Move him up 1.5 divisions.
Well, it's closer to super welterweight than Cotto and Canelo were for middleweight. So I want to give Benavidez credit here because, we've often been critical. So I want to give him something. He won a decision, by the way, on that card. But Valdez, if you want to know how the fight went, he did what you normally see from him. Kept his feet moving, very fluid, countered in all the windows of opportunity he was given, and then landed a big left hook to put Ernie Sanchez away, which was a pretty rare thing because Valdez is kind of similar to Campbell in that these aren't power punchers. And if you think they're power punchers, you have the wrong read on them. Now, luckily, Valdez's corner knows that. Campbell's corner doesn't know that. Anyway, Valdez scored a knockout, which you don't often see from him. He doesn't put guys away. He's usually an accumulation kind of guy. All right, so we're going to go through the previews, and we're going to go through these pretty fast because we're already pretty deep into the podcast. We'll spend some time on some of them, but if you really want to hear in detail previews, you know that there's a separate preview podcast for that. All right, so Luis Concepcion will fight Tyson Marquez for a paper title this week, and this is pretty interesting because these guys have fought twice already. With the last time, I think Tyson Marquez knocked him out in the first round a few years ago. So good job, WBA. Let's see. And Jose Concepcion's not that good, by the way. Not a world-level fighter. Shane Mosley will be on the undercard in Panama. So how do you go from a title fight potentially with Liam Smith to fighting on an undercard in Panama? Horrible. On Friday, Denis Shafikov will fight Rances Barthelemy. And what I want to say about Barthelemy, this is a lightweight fight too.
They're back at lightweight, aren't they?
Yeah. But Barthelemy is one of the more underrated fighters in all of boxing. I think he's often overlooked, and he's really skilled. Really, really skilled. He's got some power, very good boxer. I think at lightweight right now, he's at least even with every single fighter. There's no fighter at lightweight that is a clear favorite over Barthelemy. Anybody want to challenge me on that? Does anybody know who Rances Barthelemy is?
Not passionately enough to get some time on it. Go on, move on. There's a lot for this week.
Okay, Robert Helenius versus... Wait, where's Erkin Tepper supposed to be here? He's not. Now it's some guy named Franz. I don't know what happened. I haven't seen a news piece that says anything about this fight because this was supposed to be Helenius versus Erkin Tepper with the winner likely going on to a world title fight. That's not happening. I don't know what happened to Erkin Tepper, but maybe he's pulling a Charles Martin. He's pulled out of this fight, and what we're going to get is Fury versus Tepper in the meantime as Klitschko recovers from whatever. Maybe. I don't know. But that was a good fight. I was really looking forward to that fight because Helenius is a gigantic heavyweight, and Tepper's not. And Tepper knocked out David Price, a gigantic heavyweight, and I was wondering if he could do it again with Robert Helenius. I think he could have.
I don't know. I sense no, but it was a very interesting one for that reason.
See, I'm telling you guys, Simon loves heavyweights. Like, he's talkative now. If you guys don't know about Robert Helenius, because he did take a really long hiatus from the sport, he's a gigantic Nordic, I think he's from Norway or Sweden or something, heavyweight, maybe Finland. Is that a Nordic country, Finland? He's for my money, okay, he beat Derek Chisora, controversially. I don't think he's that good. He's like, just, for me, he's just big and clumsy. What do you think, Simon?
So firstly, born Sweden, resides in Finland, nicknamed the Nordic Nightmare, 6.5 foot.
I was right about two things.
It's as you say, like he's beaten all the right people that if you said this guy has stopped Liakovic, beat Derek Chisora, beat Michael Sprott, you'd think, knocked out Samuel Peter back in 2011, like that, you'd go, that's an interesting resume. But you're right, he can be unseated, he can be stopped out of his rhythm. I don't think Tepper's the guy to do it, but I think he could.
Yeah, Tepper's on this little... by knocking out David Price brutally and pretty much ending his career, a lot of people are going to fall victim to he's way better than he actually is. And I think it's a question that I always ask myself, but is this guy really good? And just try to look at all the reasons why the guy's not good, and then see if I still believe that he's good afterwards. And in this situation, when I look at Robert Helenius, is he really good? Not really. He could be, but not really. So let's move on to the next fight, the fight we all want to talk about. Liam Smith versus Jimmy Kelly. Liam Smith, one of the Smith brothers. I guess now we have to call him the second most talented Smith brother, given that Paul Smith has been pretty much outclassed in his last 2.5 fights.
He's been reduced to Paulie Malignaggi enthusiast.
Liam Smith is Callum Smith's brother, and Callum Smith is one of the two remaining top British prospects. Let's see. He's going to fight Jimmy Kelly, who's 16-0. He's 23, 7 knockouts. Is there any way this fight goes other than Liam Smith by stoppage?
Do you think he has the power to put him away?
Liam Smith had the power to put, I can't even remember the guy's name, John Thompson away. Nobody saw that coming.
Yeah, I just don't think it's a foregone conclusion, is all.
Smith has stopped his last 6 opponents.
He has?
Yeah, he has.
Yeah, but,
this shows you how big of Liam Smith fans we are. Look, the point here is that this should be an interesting fight, but one that Liam's ultimately going to win. I mean, this is his first title defense.
Do you know who else has stopped his last 6 opponents?
Deontay Wilder?
Luke Campbell?
No, really?
Yeah.
I mean, their accumulation.
Mendy.
Their accumulation. Are you trying to say that Jimmy Kelly is on the level of a guy like Yvonne Mendy? Come on, get out of here. I'm not even going to discuss this fight anymore. All right, so let's talk about the main event here. This is the fight of the weekend, maybe the fight of the year, maybe the fight of the decade. I don't know. Andy Lee, Traveler Heritage, Romanian or something, defending whatever title he's got against Billy Joe Saunders, Traveler from Irish. Right? Am I right?
He's an Irish Traveler rather than Romany, yeah.
Okay, cool. So, biggest test of Billy Joe Saunders' career. Billy Joe Saunders also, by the way, we knew what we were going to get when he went and fought Eubank. Saunders is a good boxer, and we knew that Eubank is like, he doesn't have the instinctual talent of boxing to beat a guy like Saunders. And if you're somebody out there that isn't convinced by Billy Joe Saunders and thought, oh, well, he gassed in the second half of Eubank, so clearly he's not that good. No. Look at the record. Even somebody who just gets their boxing information and their knowledge from BoxRec can look at the BoxRec and say, wow, Saunders does not take easy fights. I mean, every time he fights, just look at his BoxRec. You can clearly tell he says, give me the best available guy you can find. No, he's got 3 losses. I don't want him. And he goes out and delivers every time. He's outboxed most of his guys, and he outclasses them.
Yeah, I think there's that touch-up in July, but you are right. His resume is littered with excellent resume. He's got 22-0, 15-0, 18-0, 16-0. There's lots of people that are on good streaks. He rarely fights people on losing records.
I mean, he just doesn't have those a lot. You see this a lot with the British prospects, where it's like they have all the usual suspects on their resume of guys who get beat up, like Christoph Zott, like Luke Campbell has. You don't see that with Saunders. I mean, Saunders is one of those guys that you just want to see succeed because of the level of competitiveness he's got. And it's going to be interesting because does Saunders have the skill and talent to basically neutralize one of boxing's best weapons, that miracle right hook that has basically been money for Andy Lee every time he's landed it in the past few years? Bailed him out of fights, got him back into fights, won him fights. I mean, that world title that he's got from the right hook. So does Saunders have the experience enough? Is he skilled enough to avoid it? That's really what this is going to come down to, because I think if Saunders avoids that shot, there's no way Lee beats him. Lee's not outboxing him. You disagree?
With what part? I mean, I don't think anyone knows the answer to whether he's skilled enough to neutralize Andy Lee, and that's what makes it interesting.
I'm saying that if Lee doesn't land that right hook, he's getting outboxed.
Yeah, I agree with that premise, but I don't think anyone knows the answer to this one.
Well, obviously, except me, because I'm always right.
Yeah, I think what are the odds on this? We need to have a look at this. What are the betting lines?
Let me look it up. Somebody talk and say some controversial stuff while I'm looking this up.
No, but
it's even.
I think on this one as well, we've got the winner. Yeah, I think that's responsible. That's about where it should be, shouldn't it?
It's really even. And I'm looking.
I'm sorry, it's even.
And I'm looking at some aggregator sites. So I'm looking at like the odds across multiple betting lines or betting websites. If there's a favorite, and very few sites have a favorite, but if there is one, it's Andy Lee. And that I'm guessing that's because of betting public. The betting public have bet on Andy Lee, so it's swayed the line.
Well, yeah, and obviously Andy Lee has a more well-rounded career with more notable fights and names.
Absolutely.
Oh, but can you tell me the notable wins?
Yeah, all right, but you know what we're saying is this is someone who's no stranger to the world scene versus someone who's relatively new to it. If you could argue that 14 at all, yeah. So I think in retrospect, maybe the Eubank fight is a world level fight, even though it wasn't regarded as one.
I think so.
But I don't know. It'd be a tough one to call this, and I think more interestingly, the winner then is potentially after Eubank.
The winner gets Eubank?
I think they were saying last night that Eubank would be looking towards the winner of this fight.
Oh, and I'm sure Frank Warren will be so pleased to do business with Chris Eubank again. I doubt it.
But I don't know. I for that reason, I hope it's Andy Lee.
You want to see Lee versus Eubank?
Because I'm convinced Lee would tear him apart. Yeah.
Well, why do you want to see Eubank lose? He's like from your city.
Him lose. It would just confirm what I've been saying, that the reckless approach would be detrimental. But again, as you said, I think it'd be a wild fight. It'd be a tear up because they'd both be in receipt of damage and delivering it.
You know, I really wish that they hadn't moved this fight's location. Obviously, you can't do this outdoors because I'm pretty sure it's wintertime in the UK and it's probably really cold. And
we do have winter, yeah. And
yeah, the weather's cold. I mean, it's sunny every day here, so what do I know? But, man, can you imagine 50,000 fans in Ireland? The atmosphere that this fight would have if they had kept it on as an outdoor fight.
With
Real
U2
disappointment.
Playing in the background.
Are they from Ireland?
I think so.
Okay, I was hoping that you didn't know. So what are the predictions here? Who do you guys got?
I'm struggling.
I'm not. Andy Lee.
Andy Lee?
Yeah.
What's your method?
Yeah. Decision. Ooh, yeah.
I would say that's for me. That's the most unlikely.
Good.
Is the decision for Andy Lee, and I always say though the most unlikely thing usually happens.
That's not true.
Well, except in the Mayweather fights, but now it's true. Now that I've qualified it.
I see. No, I really don't. I don't like deciding on this one. I'm too hard pressed to pick somebody.
Well, if you had to give betting advice to somebody, what would you say?
I'd say that
Don't take bad advice from me.
I'd say that Saunders is like way too overrated.
Ooh,
Ouch.
you're lucky we're at 55 minutes on this recording thing, because we'd have to spend another 10 minutes debating this. So let's just move on to the HBO card, which is going to be a fantastic one. That's sarcasm. Luis Ortiz versus Brian Jennings headlines. Ortiz is here. He's only here because he's got some knockouts. And Jennings is here because he was competitive against Vladimir Klitschko. So we have a heavyweight fight, and there's been VADA testing, so we can be assured that Ortiz is clean, right? Because he has tested positive in the past for PEDs, which happens. Who do you guys have in this fight?
I like Jennings for this one.
Jennings, yeah.
Me too.
Just because of what he was able to withstand against Klitschko.
Yeah, and it's not like Klitschko didn't bounce right hands off of his face, because he did, and Jennings was like, oh, well, actually, this isn't so bad. I like this, actually.
Right. Exactly.
And Ortiz, I think, to steal one of Jason's lines, is overrated.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that may pick Ortiz are fooled by his power.
Maybe, but is this a showcase fight?
For who?
Jennings.
No,
you want to talk about a showcase fight, okay? Let's talk about a showcase fight then.
I don't
Nicholas
think
Walters.
it's a showcase. Versus
the Axeman's
Aaron
coming.
Did you want to make a point on this fight, Simon, though, on the Ortiz-Jennings fight?
No, other than that, I reckon it'll be a fun one. That's on my must-watch list.
Jesus. Okay.
loves heavyweights.
Yeah, exactly.
I love the heavyweights.
The man loves heavyweights.
All right. Nicholas Walters versus Jason Sosa. So Sosa is an okay fighter, but we know that Walters is pretty good. And this is one of those perfect fights that you get when it's like, okay, we need an opponent where Walters is going to come into the division. He'll have a respectable opponent, but completely destroy him. And suddenly everybody's like, wow, Walters carried his power up. Best super featherweight in the world. We cannot wait for you to put him in with Francisco Vargas, the murderous puncher. And that's what they're going to do. Trust me. When Walters wins this fight, they're going to say, what about Francisco Vargas? He just beat Takashi Miura. And the boxing public is going to demand this fight, and we have Top Rank and Golden Boy putting on another one of their big fights. And I mean, I say that half jokingly, but that is a good fight, I believe.
Yeah,
Walters versus Vargas. One that Walters wins, though. I think Walters is a little deceptively good. I mean, because if you really watch him closely, there's times when I think that he's really vulnerable, but I do think he's actually pretty talented.
He suffers because he's got half the viewing people that were just blown away by the Donaire fight and think that he's got this, godlike power and timing and that he's immaculate. But then, as you say, because there are the chinks in the armor that people see, I think that the people that notice those chinks respond to how heavily everyone likes him by really undervaluing him. So you've got a lot of people that are saying this guy isn't as good as everyone thinks, he's actually quite bad. And you've got the other side saying this person's amazing. And obviously the truth's somewhere in the middle.
That's exactly right with Walters and a lot of fighters, actually. I mean, we could come up with a top 10 list of fighters who fall into that category of they're just in between both sides of the public perception. I mean, sometimes the public gets it right with fighters, but I think Walters is one of those guys where we've got it all wrong. I'm not going to. We're really going long on time, so we're going to not spend any time on this. Again, if you want to hear full previews of these fights, there's a separate podcast that comes out later in the week just for that. Yunieski Gonzalez will fight Vyacheslav Shabransky on HBO Latino prior to the fight. Really good fight. Shabransky is a prospect, and he's getting thrown into the fire here, and this is not a good fight for him. His last fight, I think he was badly hurt in the first round or second round or something. He was badly hurt in that fight. Didn't look like he was going to go on to win it. He did. Gonzalez, from what we saw from Pascal, should be the one fighting Sergey Kovalev for a world title. He's not. He's fighting Vyacheslav Shabransky, who's like Russian or Ukrainian, so I guess that's some consolation prize. I don't know. Maybe it's to get him prepared for Kovalev. Who knows? Also on the undercard, Yuri Gamboa is back. We all love Gamboa. He's the best, not very smart fighter out there, who's incredibly skilled, yet does not realize that he's 5'3" and should be fighting at 126 pounds. So naturally, he's fighting at 135 pounds. So let's move on to the news, guys, and we have to go through this. So first of all, Manny Pacquiao delayed the announcement of his next opponent.
Shocking.
Who cares?
The listeners cared. Manny Pacquiao, #1 fan favorite.
Yeah, the news is they still ain't got any news.
The WBC extended everything too. So
I wonder why.
It's the land of postponements and extensions.
And lies, because Aram keeps lying.
He is always lying. No, the news is there's no news. There's nothing to talk about yet. They're just filling headlines and article space to just continually write about him, despite there being nothing really remarkable to say.
Are we all in agreement here, though, that it's Bradley?
No.
Nah.
Why can't I get you guys to agree? It's Bradley.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it was, but I'm not sold yet.
Yeah, I'm not sold yet. That's a tough sell to fans.
I still think it's going to be someone who's largely irrelevant.
Like
I
Jesse
think it has
Vargas?
to be Berto.
Berto, yeah.
Yeah.
I had to stop and think a second, because can we get that? I think we can.
They both do Berto, and that's it.
And what if? Can you imagine if they did do that and Berto upset Pacquiao?
I knew you were
with one of those
that.
right uppercuts on the inside that he's actually pretty good at throwing. Jesus, this is the fight we need to see.
I think what we can agree on is it's probably not going to be Crawford, unfortunately.
I don't think so. Or Khan.
Which means that Crawford is going to end up knocking out Victor Postal. I don't know if I'm happy or not about that.
I'll be fine with that.
Some people out there are not going to be fine with that, because Victor Postal seems to be a fan favorite, given that he's a murderous knockout puncher.
No, given that he upset their fanboy favorite. That's what it really is.
Okay, IBF stripped Tyson Fury. No surprise there. But
I think that's fair, to be honest, because he didn't defend it for well over a week. And
correct.
When you're a new champion, you really do need to be facing your mandatories kind of the next night. It really
weekly.
Is possible. But
yeah.
I mean,
within
if it's
20
been
minutes,
12
if you're the
days
WBO,
and you haven't defended it, then you need to be stripped.
Yep. And
I think that's within their guidelines, right? That's within the guidelines for the IBF.
It's on the website, actually. What Simon's talking about, if you want to look it up, it's on the website. It says within 12 days you have to have fought our mandatory appointed fighter, which was Vyacheslav Glasgow, who was actually not going to beat Tyson Fury either way. But now Glasgow does get to fight for this. And I said this last week, almost to a T, that Charles Martin, what basically I said is the winner of Breazeale Martin, and Martin, I said, was the one who was likely going to be the one that would get the shot with Glasgow, should he beat Breazeale, would get the fight with Glasgow for the IBF title, which is comical. Vyacheslav Glasgow versus Charles Martin for that belt. Just ridiculous. Okay. Nothing else to say there. Danny Jacobs says he's willing to fight Golovkin but wants fair payment.
What is fair payment for a beatdown?
It's probably not what Golovkin opponents get paid normally, I'm guessing. Because $50,000 isn't going to do it.
They're not going to sign this anytime soon, are they? I see a rematch way sooner than I see a Golovkin.
Well, and Jacobs is now, his mandatory is Eubank Jr., I believe. I'm just looking up the purse that Willie Monroe got to fight Golovkin. $100,000. Well, not even what I predicted. Jesus.
Stop it. That wasn't what he got paid.
No, it was. The fight purse that Willie Monroe got paid was $100,000. Remember on the podcast, we were like, that's pathetic.
That is so mean.
Yeah. Rubio got paid $450,000.
I know.
Willie Monroe, $100,000 to fight Gennady Golovkin. And that boy earned his money. He needs
Mrs. Bradley to come negotiate for him next time.
Jeez, or just get Al Heyman. You know, you get paid double that to fight, the 144th ranked middleweight.
Right.
Deontay Wilder's going to fight Arthur Spielka. And this is after they went to Shannon Briggs and offered him a fight, and Briggs rejected it because he said, no. $2 million or I'm not fighting.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds awfully a lot like Danny Jacobs.
Sounds awfully a lot like a dumb decision, because $2 million, it's like, okay, fine. Jacobs is in the right here by saying, like, I don't want to get paid $100,000 or $450,000 to fight Golovkin. Briggs, when was the last time Briggs was in a relevant fight?
When was the last time anybody came to him and offered him anything?
Any money, yeah.
Any?
I think the last time when we asked him to do an AMA.
Yeah.
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 No, but just a little bit about this fight. I think this is a good fight for Wilder. See,
Spielka?
I think a lot of people make this mistake in thinking that, well, Wilder's got a belt, so he's actually good. It's like, no, do not do that. You have to watch the fights. And if you watch the fights, you'll realize that Wilder's just an okay fighter. He's not a top, maybe he's top 10. He's certainly not a top 5 heavyweight in the world, if you ask me. And people get mad that I don't understand this. So people hate on Wilder and say he's not that good, and Klitschko and Fury and Joshua beat him. But then they complain when he does it, when he's in with guys that are not that good. And it's like, you do realize that he's not that skilled, and you argue that he's not that skilled. So shouldn't he not be fighting guys who are way better than him? Shouldn't he be fighting guys around his...
It's the belt. It's exactly what we talked about earlier.
But which is why belts are freaking useless.
Which is why these promoters shouldn't be getting these guys belts at 12 fights, because
it's hard not to. The WBA makes everybody, like, I'm ranked by the WBA. I'm ranked 11. I'm serious. Kell Brook is in negotiation with me to fight me in April. You think I'm joking? Serious. So, you guys get the nonsense here, right? But anyway, Spielka's the best available guy right now. And
didn't he have somebody drop out too? Like Wilder had somebody drop out on him.
Whether he did or not is irrelevant, because I can't remember. But
that's how Angela's brain works.
It's gonna hurt my argument here. But I was going through the list of everybody at heavyweight right now, and pretty much everybody's tied up. And the guys who aren't tied up. The guys who aren't tied up, you don't want to see that fight. Trust me. You do not want to see Wilder versus Steve Cunningham or Tarver or Thompson. Thompson just kind of fought recently, and I really doubt he's going to come in shape to beat Wilder. You don't want to see Wilder Stavern. So Spielka, best available guy. And I think this is the first time in Wilder's career where we can say he's actually got the best available guy in the ring with him right now. He may not be in the top 10 at heavyweight, but he's in spitting distance. Actually, no, he's not. It depends on what kind of spit you got in your spit game, but
Spielka's relevant to the world scene, which is a touch more than anyone else Wilder's been in there with in probably ever.
Correct. Let me ask you guys a question, and I'm pretty sure you guys are about to just be silent right now, and I'm going to have to recover. Did you guys have Jennings beating Spielka in their fight before the stoppage?
I can't remember how many rounds it went necessarily, but it was a slightly competitive fight. But Jennings clearly had the power, where Spielka had more output, right?
Because I remember watching that fight. I watched it with the sound off. I remember being around a bunch of people and just ignoring everybody to watch the fight. And I know that Jennings was ahead on the cards, but I thought it was a tough fight for Jennings.
But Jennings was really landing the cleaner, harder shots. But it was you're right, it was a tough fight. Why, you think you got an upset in the mix here?
I said nothing of that sort, and nor would I ever imply that Deontay Wilder would lose a fight.
Ever.
No, I to be honest,
I think if Deontay Wilder ever loses a fight, that there's going to be a black screen. It's just going to be dropped over all the cameras, and nobody's going to be ever able to see it.
It's good. We're going to there's going to be a black screen, and then we're suddenly going to get a different fight.
A different fight.
It was going to be like Ocean's 11 when they did the thing and they put the different cameras on. It'll be like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I don't think Joshua. I just can't stop talking about him. I don't think Deontay Wilder will lose until he fights one of the legitimate prospects out there, Joseph Parker, Anthony Joshua. I think they're going to be wise and say, we're not going to really risk Wilder until it's worth it.
Yeah.
We got to get some return on this. And for now,
I mean, I think the risk reward on this isn't nice because I don't think it's going to earn much, but I do think that there's going to be danger in it.
Yep.
Like if you take the risk in this fight compared to the risk in fighting, Johan Tuhapas, like where does it rank up? Is it twice as risky, 3 times as risky?
Fighting Spilka?
Yeah.
This is less risky because
than Johan Tuhapas.
Yeah, because we never seen Johan Tuhapas, and YouTube had no video of him, so we didn't know if we were fighting like a poor heavyweight or a good one. I'm just kidding. Obviously, this is a riskier fight.
And is it a higher earning fight to reflect that risk?
I don't think it. Who knows?
Probably not. No.
I mean, so if they're doing it in Chicago, maybe, because Spilka's a pretty big draw in Chicago. Polish community.
Real
He's
Polish outcome. Yeah.
Isn't your wife Polish?
Yep.
Yeah. See, I mean, Jason's a big fan of Spilka.
We would have driven
all
out. If it was in Chicago, we would have driven out.
You really would have driven to a Deontay Wilder fight?
No. Are you kidding me? It's like a 17-hour drive.
Again, don't know the geography of how far Connecticut. I mean, that looks like a 5-hour drive to me.
Yeah.
Okay, if that. So
Yeah, to round off my point, their risk reward ratio, they're being more adventurous here than they ever have been.
And there's no reward financially.
It's a similar reward, but way higher risk. So, maybe it's dumb, maybe it's smart. Who knows?
All right, so that is about it for this week's episode. So a couple of things before we finish. First of all, I want to apologize to you listeners who listened to the preview podcast because I didn't put one out this week, and the explanation for that is I could not get the damn thing to upload. The internet wasn't fast enough where I was at because I was away from home and just couldn't get it to upload. Like, it literally would not do it. So my apologies. And basically we said everything that happened. Like, I was right on every fight except for the Campbell one. So
just take his word for it.
Take my word for it. No, really. I was like, bet on Barroso. Also, Alexander Usyk, I forgot to mention this. He won it by knockout stoppage this week, 7th round, against a guy that was not in shape and out of his depth. Usyk is coming for the cruiserweight division. Bellew, watch out. Also, an announcement. We're going to be introducing part of the Sunday Puncher umbrella, a new podcast. Completely different cast, except for I will be on it. I mean, I'm not going to do too much on it. I'm really just going to act as a moderator.
Mediator.
Yeah, mediator. It's going to be a completely different podcast to this, but it'll have a format. It's I'm really excited about it. I think the guys are excited about it, and that episode should be coming in the coming weeks. Still trying to refine how the show is actually going to go. So that's it for this week. Simon or Jason, any last words? All right, well, thanks for listening, and we'll be back next within a couple of days, actually. Probably tomorrow. Ooh, actually, here's the last word. We are 2 weeks away from the return of the monster.